Let's do this. Brad Hudson, thank you very much for being here again. Episode number 2 of the Q&A sessions.
Thank you, Hugo. It's great to be here, and always love coming here.
Yeah, I mean, your episodes are bestsellers in all things Dig Deep podcast. Number 1, number 2. People loved the first episode of the Q&A session. So, I really wanted to have you back. Talk about one of your favorite topics, of course, mental toughness, right?
Yes. So in the last year, I've really gotten into sports psychology and reading a lot of books. I spend an hour a day probably studying sports psych. And so I've been reading everything in the field and talking to a lot of experts on the field and trying to learn everything I can. And every day I wake up and I'm like, how can I get better today in that field and as a coach? And when I go to bed at night, I'm like, did I get better today? So nice. I hold myself a little bit accountable so that every day I do some work on getting better. So
to kind of get this started, again, we got tons of questions from you guys. Thank you very much. And one of the things that we've done is to try to bring some flow to the conversation is just divided all the questions into big subgroups. And but I wanted to kick it off, Brad, by talking about routines. We were just talking about that. Do you have any particular routine that you do practice on a regular basis? Any kind of daily routine or ritual, that helps you with that?
I mean, myself with my own sports psych stuff?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I exercise on a stationary bike, and so I always spend an hour reading sports psych books. Book like this, I've read this maybe 20 times. So
what book is that?
This is The Champion's Mind by Jim Aframo.
Mm-hmm.
And when I read something, I read the chapter 3 times before I move on. So
wow.
I've read this maybe 20 times, and I also like Stan Beacham's Elite Minds, which is very good. So I spend about an hour a day studying sports psych right now, and as far as routines, as far as my athletes, the one thing I do know is I try to get them when they're competing to get a routine down, and that involves doing the same warm-up as they do in training, eating some of the same meals, the same foods, listening to music, whatever relaxes you and gets you in the frame of mind. Everyone's a little different. I think, some people need to get pumped up before they race. Some people need to be relaxed. And I think you do that before important workouts and unimportant races and important races, so that no matter if you're going to compete, I think you try to get a routine down, like that, so you have some sort of familiarity going when you compete. And then the other thing is, as far as routines, I do tell my athletes to visualize, to watch a race. It could be Bekele and Gebre Selassie in Paris 10,000, which is a really great race to go back and watch in the World Championships. And then think about their race, what they want to do.
Okay.
So first they watch that race, and then they spend 10 or 15 minutes thinking about how they're going to execute their race. So you try to watch a similar race. So if it's a marathon, you watch a marathon. So maybe you watch Kipchoge in the Olympics.
Right.
And then you think about how you're going to get it done.
Got it. In your personal routine, besides reading books, which, by the way, I'm curious, how much time does it usually take you to finish a book? Or how many books do you read, I don't know, per month, let's say?
So
because you read a lot.
Yeah, they say the average American reads 3 books a year.
Yeah.
Okay. So I probably read... but I'll read things over and over again. But I go through a book. I go through 3 or 4 books probably
a month.
Yeah, probably 3 or 4 books a month at least.
Do you take notes?
I do. I take notes in the book sometimes, and if I like a book, I read it over again, maybe 2 or 3 times.
Wow.
Yeah.
Reading books. What about you get up at a particular time in the day?
So I get up at 4 a.m. most days.
Yeah.
And I have coffee, and I spend an hour writing training normally, and then at least somewhere in there 30 minutes reading stuff, news, and just reading stuff, my sports psych stuff. looking over athlete stuff, and so that's kind of, and then I go train my athletes, and then I usually read a little more. I try to write some training in the early afternoon, and then I go work out myself.
Yeah, nice. One of the things that I always think about, and people have asked here, is, I guess, training by yourself and training with other people. People have asked, when people are training solo, when people are training by themselves, sometimes it can be hard to push it to the next level. So do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I'm big on group training when it works, but I do think it's very individual. There's athletes that I coach and that do better by themselves. It doesn't mean that they shouldn't be training with athletes, because I do think you have to get used to, if you're going to race against athletes, you got to train with athletes. But there is an element of sometimes you want to separate the athletes so you can really specialize the training and they can concentrate on their pace. And this is especially important during marathon training, because the marathon's the one event you need to learn. There's an intuition and a sixth sense of feeling what's right in the marathon, because conditions can vary, wind can vary, hills can vary. But the best marathoners, if you look over the history, like Stefani Baldini, they know the race. They know what they can handle and what they can't handle. And I think that's something you have to learn sometimes by yourself. And there's an element of strength that comes sometimes doing long runs by yourself.
Nice. Okay.
So you need both a group, but you also need sometimes to be able to do stuff on your own.
Yeah. I agree. What else?
Some of my women athletes will use pacers and stuff like that, and I think that's great. But I do think sometimes it's good for them to do some of the stuff on their own, so they don't rely completely on that.
Something that I was thinking about the other day is, okay, you work with. Do you want to fix that microphone?
Yeah, it's okay.
Here. No, give me a minute.
Sorry.
No, you're good.
What did I do?
You're good. I think we can maybe. Yeah, it's kind of.
Sorry, I keep.
No, you're good. This is actually. Will doing this work better?
Mm-hmm. Perfect. You'll edit that?
Yeah. Cool. All right, we're back. Can you hear, Brad?
I sure can.
So, you coach several athletes, and I'm sure they all have different personalities, and we all get motivated by several, in different ways. For instance, when you're training with Ali and Sid and Parker, etc.
That's a question you asked, I know.
That's my question.
I can answer that if you want.
I'm just curious, how do you get to motivate your athletes, differently?
So, in the case of Ali, Sid, and Parker, they're all very different. Sid is very new to the training. He's just out of college, and he doesn't have a huge background in training hard.
That's Sid Vaughn, by the way.
Sid Vaughn. And so, he didn't come from a high powerhouse program where he trained very hard in college.
Oh, okay.
So he does have a lot of room for improvement, and I think he did show that this spring over 10K, and I think he's going to show that over the half and the marathon come sometime soon. But Parker has been training hard. I've known him since he was very young, since he was 16. He's been training very hard since he was 16, and very advanced athlete. And he's further ahead than I imagined. I thought it would take him a couple more years to get as strong as he is, and so he's someone that at times I put him completely by himself. He's fine by himself. He reads his body by himself, and he's the type of athlete too that I have to give him a lot of leeway on the paces, on the workouts I give him, because if I give him too slow a paces, he's unmotivated. It's just like if I control his race too much, if I control how he races and put too conservative on it, he tends to race a lot more conservative.
Huh. Interesting.
And sometimes doesn't race at all. But if I let him go a little bit, he gets excited and really races.
Right.
So that's a huge mental thing. And Ali is someone that's trained herself. And we sit down normally every 7 to 10 days and go over what we can agree on with her training. And she has a pacer. She's some of it too is their motivation on what they like in training and hate in training. She hates doing hills. She's very strong though, very strong in the weight room, and a very strong athlete.
And thank thinking the way you talk to your athletes, especially when they're training, is it kind of is it the same, the same type of communication, or is, for instance, the way you talk to Ali is different than the way you talk to Sid, or the way you motivate them, or have them?
So way
you know,
different sometimes. It just depends on. I try to read their mood. You get to know the athlete, and you try to read their mood for the situation, and there's no 100% like, oh, I'm this way or that way. There's certain times when they need to finish the training, when it's the right thing to do, and I can not be harsh, but I can press their buttons a little bit. And then there's other times when I'm pretty, I wouldn't say soft, but I'm pretty lenient when they're fatigued, and I feel like they don't need to be pushed. It's very different, and the situation is different. I think every time it's not always the same.
It's interesting. I was just telling you that I was just listening to a podcast where Kobe Bryant is interviewed, and he talks about his days playing for the Lakers. He talked about Phil Jackson, the coach. He would read the biographies and the histories and the backgrounds of all of his athletes, not only the athletic or part of them, but also their stories. So he would know more about their personal lives and what motivates you, where they come
I try
from.
to meet the parents.
Exactly.
You try to meet the parents. You try to see where they're coming from and what motivates them, and what's gonna. I see it in a lot of my athletes. What's gonna press their buttons and
exactly. Nice.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. So.
But Phil Jackson, very smart and really good with the mind.
Yeah. That was a really cool interview. Let's see. I'm looking here at some questions, and jump in, Brad, if you feel that you want to talk about something specifically.
So someone asked a question just on training the mind, how I go about doing it and stuff. And so in the past, I've tried to use methodology to train the mind. So I'd use certain type of workouts to train the mind. So if I felt an athlete was weak in a certain area or weak mentally, I would use hill climbs. I would use, if I felt like they had a hard time with long continuous runs, I would, use that type of stuff in the training. So I'd use methodology. But I've gotten a lot more into the mental part, and I think you can break it down into 3 parts. And lifestyle, which is how you live your life. It's a huge part of the mental training and sports psych is, are you willing to do the right things all the time to be a champion? And that's, your sleep, that's your diet, that's your routine as far as getting treatment on your body and taking care of your body nutritionally. Yeah. So that's lifestyle, and that's huge part. You're only with the athletes a couple hours a day, so a lot is on them, how they live their lives, how professional they are, and running's gotten a lot more professional since my day. It's extremely professional. You have to take it like it's any other job, and even though it's not any other job, you have to spend a lot of time recover whatever it is you're doing. You got to spend time doing it, recovering and taking care of yourself. It's a 24-hour job. And then the third part, so lifestyle training, and then racing is a different game, I think. It's just having the right mind frame when you race. It's very mental, and it's not being afraid to fail. I think when athletes compete is the most important thing. So in training, you want to keep them healthy, and at times I hold them back because the name of the game is to save it for the race. But racing is the name of the game, and so you do want them once they can get rid of the fear of failure. I think you can get them great. If they're not afraid to fail, then they're willing to go for it, and they take the blocks off. When you go into a race like I just don't want to fail, you have a better chance of failing because you have the block. You're thinking that way. You want to go in with you're already in a bad position. You want to go in a positive mood, like I'm going for it. I'm going to do this, and I'm not afraid.
And I imagine that you get to that point of not being afraid of failure by, I guess, racing a lot too, or
So I think and just changing your mind a little bit. What are your goals? What are you after? Training should mimic the racing as much as you can do it at times, and so you should be preparing your mind that way in the training.
Right. This is an interesting question. I don't know what you think about is weather conditions.
So I mean, go ahead.
Yes. person who's asking that when running, he does well in, I think, cold conditions and hot conditions, but when he is training in conditions that are humid, he struggles mentally and physically, I think. So he had any I don't know if you have any thoughts on that.
Yeah, so a lot of competing in tough conditions is being used to them mentally. First of all, the expectations of the conditions, knowing the conditions that you're going to race in and preparing for that in training. And so if it's humidity, it's going somewhere where there's humid conditions and training in it. You can you have to be used to what you're going to do in a race. And yeah, there's some natural physiology. Some people are worse in stuff than others. But, if you come from the high mountains, humidity can be tough because you're training in non-humidity. And, but you try to be specific in the training you do, so you mimic the conditions you're in, and right. I think then you have a better idea of what you can do. But it's like the marathon optimum temperature to race in is 54 degrees, and so for every 6 degrees over 54, it's supposed to be a minute slower. So in 60, you have to add a minute. 66, 2 minutes. 72, 3 minutes.
Wow.
78, 4 minutes.
Yeah.
So it's just because it's your body's going to heat up, and it's not ideal. You need cool conditions to really compete well,
right?
For optimum performance.
Huh. Cool. What else? Oh. This is a great question. This one is interesting. She's asking, it's Lauret W. Holm. She's asking, is it possible to have different mental power from sport to sport?
So
what do you think about that?
I do think so. So probably some of the same, depending on what the sport is, but probably, I'm guessing she's asking about triathlon. So I'm guessing a lot of the same things that make you great in swimming and biking and running, contribute to you being successful in other events. They go hand in hand. But I do think that what you're good at, you're going to have more confidence at, and there's certain events you're just going to feel more comfortable with mentally and be able to push. Some people are scared on the bike a little bit. Some people fear the swim, especially the start, because it's crazy. And some people are comfortable on the run, but it's a different game at the end of a triathlon when you've done the two events, and how, it's easy to be mentally tough when you're fresh, probably, in the on some of the stuff, and so you get to the run, and so I do think they can go hand in hand, but some of it's probably confidence and your experience in those sports.
Yeah. Huh. Interesting. All right. What else do we have? You have anything? Bree Evans asks, what do you tell your athletes when they are mentally and physically fatigued beyond measure? What do you do to push them to the next level?
So, I specialize mostly in coaching elite athletes, and I feel like they already have not all of them, but some of them have a pretty good, they can push themselves. And so I don't always be the catalyst in that. I don't always try to push them harder. I think a lot of my job is just, I'm trying to keep these people healthy. Allie's super talented, and most of her game is keeping her health, getting her fit, but also keeping her healthy going into the race. And so, I'm not I'm not Lombardi out there yelling at the athletes and pushing them to great lengths all the time. A lot of you have these racehorses. Sometimes you're trying to calm them and keep them healthy. And so, but there's a lot of things you can do within that. Break stuff down in components into small bits. If you're doing a long tempo run, 20K, you want to take 1K at a time, and so it's not always about pushing them to the next level. Sometimes it is. There are people that have blocks and stuff like that, and I just think getting them a little bit when they go race and they go compete. Training's a little bit different. You don't always want to bring that atmosphere. I know a lot of pro teams train like they. Like it's game day, so they're ready for it, and so it's the same thing. But I think a lot of times you don't want to bring that extra few percent to training all the time. You want to leave a little bit in the tank So I think it's just getting them to train with a tiny bit of restraint, but not getting in the habit of that, because when they go race, you want them fearless, and you want them to push their limits.
And correct me if I'm wrong. I think you talked about this before, where I don't know if this is something that you do with your athletes or other coaches do, but for instance, if they're training for marathons, sometimes their longest runs can be, even they go beyond 26.2 miles to kind of, I imagine, it help build mental confidence, I guess, or of course.
Yeah. So there's, Salazar's athletes, I think they go 26 miles quite often. Not always very fast, but fairly fast. I think Galen reps 5:30 pace on the grass, so it's probably about 90% area he's getting there. So it is good to go longer like that, within reason. But and sometimes you use marathons as training. There's tons of people that have done that in the past.
That's amazing.
You're talking about people that are very well trained and they're running 120 to 130 miles a week. Some of these people, so them doing a marathon training doesn't take much out of them.
Right. For some reason, I just thought about
the guy that won Boston, the Japanese guy. That guy does one like every week or something.
It just reminded me.
That guy's tough mentally because he did that Boston thing.
I was just listening to this podcast the other day. It was Rich Roll interviewing this guy who just made a documentary called 3100. I think it's called. Have you heard of that race? 3100 miles. So I think every year people get together, I think in Queens, New York, and they run around this half a mile
I
loop.
heard about this. Is this like 2-week race or something?
No, I think it's 56 days.
Okay, I've heard this crazy thing.
It's incredible. And this documentary not only talks about or focuses on that, but also what other cultures do.
What do these guys do for, what are they doing for a job?
That
they can take
that would
56
be
days off.
That would be my question. Like, that must be nice. You know what? Well, okay, so now I'm thinking the guy who made the film, he said that most of the people who run that thing are not young people, are like in their 50s or 60s. So it's kind of, there's so many amazing facts. He also talks about these monks in Japan, which I cannot remember their name. But
So I've just read something. These monks, I just read something on those. So
but
they do a marathon a day for 100 days or something, and for 6 or 7 years. It's actually in this book.
Yeah.
It's actually in the Elite Minds book about them.
And do you know what happens if they do not?
Yeah, they got to kill themselves or something. Yeah. There's one monk, he did everything twice. Like, it's a 7-year thing where they do it's even in this book. They
That's
have the outline
insane.
of what they do.
Okay.
But he carried money on him, so that they could bury him if he killed himself. So they're supposed to, like, if they dishonor themselves and don't finish. So every day they do a marathon. It's like a walk jog thing, I think.
Yeah.
It's not like they run 5-minute pace.
Yeah, you're right. Well, it's interesting. He was saying that it's mostly a hike just because they go up in the mountains. I think they do some elevation gain. There's some elevation gain, and but they do that for years, and if they don't finish or they don't accomplish their goal, they kill themselves.
It's in this book. Yeah.
And they also do other things, like they're asked to, I don't know, like do like an 80-day fast thing. With no water.
Yep. Yeah.
So many other things. Just
they go 10 days without eating or something, or 9 days.
They also talked about apparently there's a big like running legacy culture in New Mexico with Navajo with the Navajo community as well. I didn't know that. Well, of course, Mexican runners.
Well, the Tamarin Indians, they have some game where for days they kick a ball.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they have like tire shoes or something. I don't know.
Have you ever heard of the Chesky runners in the Inca Empire?
What are they?
So the Cheskis were messengers from the Inca Empire, and because the Inca Empire was consisted of several countries, so there was this Inca Trail that it's about 2,000 miles long anyway, and the Cheskis were the messengers, so they would always carry all kinds of messages, through all different sections of the empire, and they were not long distance runners, or super long distance runners, but they used to work together in relay team. So and they were like really fast and really strong and all kinds of things. So that's kind of a cool thing. Cheskis. So I'm from Peru.
Yeah.
From Peru. So
Well,
yes.
we didn't get that in my old Turnpike middle school in New Jersey.
But yeah, it's amazing. 3,100 miles. What else? Mantras.
Yeah, so I do have some mantras, and I'm always sometimes posting these mantras, and in running, the science seems to be that you want a little bit of like aggressive mantra that's very simple, like I can do this, or embracing uncertainty is one I use, or expect nothing, accept everything. Just like little mantras, like hang in there, hang tough.
Yeah.
Anything that's going to. I've seen it in training and racing, how positive self-talk on people can make you much better. And I've read tons of studies on this stuff, and there's done studies even in putting people on treadmills, and in one room they came in with a clipboard, just looked at the person, and in the other room they came in and said good job, and the group they said good job to did better. So definitely I see it in training. If you're positive to people, your athletes, they definitely do better, and that's right away. I think I read some crazy study on rats a long time ago, and this is crazy. And they built an actual stadium and track for these rats. I don't know why they did this, but
okay.
And they had them race for cheese down the thing. And when they were done with their races, they made these little windows, and they put the rats in the stadium so they could watch the other rats. And they had a thing that they had something that blocked the glass, and so when the rats could see the other rats, when they knew they were being watched and they raced faster.
Huh.
So there's so much crazy stuff.
Nature.
You don't need to keep that in, maybe. You need to edit that, maybe.
No, that's good. So let me ask you this: in your own running career, was there a particular person, I think, or I don't know, philosophy that really helped you to strengthen your mental toughness? That some person or a book, a particular book, I don't know, a movie that made a big impact on you.
Without Limits.
Without Limits.
I'm
Nice.
in that, actually.
Really?
You gotta get a penny every time you're running or something. No. So I'm a little old school. I come from where people weren't huge into sports psych. It was just starting to maybe become a little more mainstream during my era, but it wasn't huge. And now all the pro teams have sports psychs, and around here I know a lot of the top athletes see a sports psych. There's a real good one in the area, and so. When I was training, or when I was racing, it was more like you put the training in hard, and that will callous you. My coach Bill Dellinger used to always say, that'll callous you for the race. But people react differently in race situations, fight or flight, and all that kind of stuff.
Fight or flight. Oh yes, I heard that word before.
So it's.
How do you react when something bad's happening?
Yeah, so the biology, you're supposed to trick your mind. So because fight or flight was put in for for our survival, and so it normally was like an animal or a fight with another tribe, tribe or something in caveman days, and so it taught you to run off, either fight or run, and so but it's tricky because that when you race, you bring up some of the same things that would, and so your biology is made for you to run or to avoid that, to save yourself.
Right.
So one of the things competing is you have to have the athletes. Why you have to make them fearless is because their biology is telling them to save themselves and protect themselves, and protect their body and all that, and run from the pain or you want them to embrace it and go forward.
Yeah.
You have to fight your biology a little bit.
Right.
Racing. It's and I think the best athletes, they're not super normal, all of them. What makes, especially in the American system, I see what makes them really good is they're a little bit not crazy, but a little bit wired, intense, and not as Renato Canova would say, they're not accountants.
Nice. What else? This is a good one from talking about managing stress of life and training. How do people manage life stress and stress of training? That's something that personally I don't do well with. When I'm in a feel stressed out, I just shut down, and it's hard for me to, go out for a workout and things like that. So, with,
So,
any thoughts?
yeah, the more I'm reading these books, the more, life and sports psych go hand in hand. Things that are going to help you in life and things that are going to help you compete better are very similar. And so a book that really helped me with stress is a book called Resilience by Eric Greitens. And he's recently disgraced governor of Missouri. But his book is amazing.
Yeah.
I don't know what happened exactly. I don't know if he had to step down. Something happened.
Some kind of affair or something.
Yeah. You saw that?
Oh, yeah, we was in the news.
Yeah. But his book is brilliant, and it really gives you a lot of techniques and ideas to manage stress. I would say you pick up a sports psych book. Most of these sports psych books go into visualizing, being positive, fighting, trying to delete we all have negative, we have a narrative as we go through the whole day, and some of it's good and some of it's bad, some of it's negative, some of it's positive. And I think really trying to change your narrative in your brain to a positiveness.
Yeah.
And to some of these sports psych books talk about the good wolf and the bad wolf, and to feed the good wolf and try to delete the bad wolf. So really being positive and it really, they say, I don't know, was 80 or 90% of how you act or react is unconscious. So you need to really fill your brain with positive images and being positive to yourself, talking to yourself in a positive way, because it's really easy to get negative.
Do you believe in things like things that are really popular these days? For instance, you have, I don't know, all these
kombucha.
That's good too. Well, you like kombucha?
It's okay.
Yeah, I don't like that. But I was gonna say, these days, you have all these gurus, I guess, I don't know what other name, that talk about starting your day, in a specific way, like getting up early, of course, but also like doing things like making your bed and meditating.
So I've read a lot on this stuff. Yeah, so the meditation's something I'm getting into a little bit, being mindfulness. Definitely, it goes hand in hand, and for athletes, I think it's important to meditate and to visualize and to see themselves successful. And, when people get stressed, the first thing they do is they don't breathe fully. They don't breathe properly. So breathing is something you want to practice, being mindful of your breathing first, as you're getting to compete or in a stressful situation.
This is interesting. I think somebody was asking about breathing, but and when you talk about meditation and visualization, because this is what I do, I know a lot of people.
Hey, we're in Boulder. Everyone meditates.
That's true, and there's all kinds of levels.
So I think I think just being mindfulness and meditating, or it can be your whatever you believe religiously. I think is very close to meditation. Things that
do you believe in like just focusing on breathing in and out, things like that, just putting your mind blank?
It's getting kind of personal.
What?
It's getting kind of personal.
Well,
do I believe in breathing in and out? Yes.
Right, but for instance, like what I do, I tend to meditate 10 minutes a day, but I don't really meditate. I try to visualize. So this is what I do. Like my first 5 minutes, I just think really hard about how I want my day to go. Like, okay, this is what I'm gonna achieve today, this, that, and then the second 5 minutes is kind of like how I visualize my ideal life in the long term, the kind of like long-term goals that I have and things that I want to have. So I don't, just breathe in. I just don't breathe and don't think about anything. I think.
You're emptying your mind or whatever.
Yeah.
So I mean that's great, and I think all that stuff's great for you. And I think anything that reduces stress and gets you, having a great day, is awesome. But
do you make your bed in the morning?
I do not.
Do you take cold showers?
I don't. Yeah, they were supposed to do that too. No, I don't.
You see, I don't know those.
I don't like cold water.
I don't either. But and I don't know if these things are a fad or.
Yeah, no, it's supposed to wake you up and get you rolling and make you more creative or something.
I do 20 seconds every morning, and I really like it. I feel that I'm hyper a weekend. I still need coffee.
So I wake up and take a Vibrant pill, which is caffeine.
Oh.
And then I go get a Americano.
Yeah.
At Starbucks, and then I get rolling on my day. I usually spend an hour. So the night before, I'll write out all the things I need to do the next day,
Mm-hmm.
And then I put
Good.
them in order of what's important, like
Yeah.
A1, A2, I put them in what's important.
Yeah.
So before I go to bed, I already have an outline of what I'm going to try to do the next day.
That's
and
awesome.
Even with training, even with that stuff. And then, it's the same with athletes. I think racing, we go over race plans and whatnot, and we think about how we want to race and compete and how we want our narrative to go. But I think the most important thing is to embrace the uncertainty of racing and what's going to. We have in our mind how our life is supposed to go or how a competition is supposed to go, but there's so much unexpected and so much happens that you need to be ready for everything.
Yeah, that's
there's
true.
even like a technique training athletes where, what do you do if your shoe comes off? What do you do if the start is 15 minutes late? You need to be ready for everything.
Yeah, bad things are gonna
and
happen eventually.
You can't control everything. That's
Yeah.
life. That's the world and people, and you can't control what other athletes do. So it's super important that you control what you can, which is yourself and your own emotions, and don't overreact to everything else. And, and be ready for anything, because stuff happens.
I just thought of I think the ultra runner Scott Jurek in an interview, he said once that when embracing uncertainty and also embracing pain, especially when you're hitting those very low moments, you have, I don't know, especially in ultra running, all kinds of blisters and everything hurts, and just embrace that rather than fight that, acknowledging that, okay, this is happening. 1, 2, how do I relax and how do I find a way to solve or fix whatever is happening to me, and 3, just go with it. So I know it's easier said than done, but
yes,
I thought it was kind of cool. All right.
Someone asked about late in a race, like how to have their mind or whatever. So everything I've seen, the science on the marathon is, a good mind frame to go into the marathon, and a good race plan is, break the marathon into segments. It can be 10K, so 4 segments, and then you add a last 2K on to your race. But break the marathon into segments, an introduction 10K, and where you're going to start to race and whatnot. And when it gets hard, the science says to, you want to be relaxed and breathing and focus on your race plan. But the last 10K, it looks good that you want to get a little pissed. You want to get a little mad.
Oh, really?
Yeah, one of the mantras I had when I was racing, I would tell so the last 10K, I wouldn't do this because I'd go crazy otherwise. So I'd try to disassociate the first 10K because I just couldn't concentrate the whole race. Yeah. So I'd be thinking, I don't know, anything. And then, then you focus in for 10 or 20K. And then the last 10K, this is what I would say inside my head. I'd say, do you want room for cream?
Yeah.
I'd say that over and over. You want room for cream? Because if I didn't make any money in this race, I was going to be in the coffee shop working.
Oh, shit.
You want room for cream?
Oh,
Making lattes
crap.
for people. So that was my mantra. Whatever motivates you. I think, everyone has different things.
Yeah, you reminded me of when I was talking with Fernando Cavada. Yeah, he was just thinking about he was running a marathon. I can't remember which one was, or a half. He ends up winning it, and there was a big prize purse, and all he was thinking about was he needed really that money to help him with his family. And
that's the best athletes in the world, that's their motivation, the Kenyans. It changes their lives. They win a marathon, it has a huge impact on a lot of times not just them, their family, their community, where they're from, their village or whatever.
Sid, come here for a minute. So we have here Mr. Sid Vaughn, aka Cajun Lightning on Instagram. Why don't you sit here for a minute?
All right.
So, okay, just talk close to me. So we're just talking about mental fortitude, and so you are training for your first marathon.
Yeah.
Right. Why don't you talk more about that? When is it, and how are you feeling? Just talk close to the microphone.
My first marathon is going to be the Cal International. It's December 15th, I believe, in Sacramento. So Brad over here has been coaching me up for it. Starting to feel good coming off my injury from the summer. So really bouncing back well, and things are starting to come together.
So December, any specific goals do you have for this first one, or just
With it being such like a new thing, it's just gonna kind of be go out there, put my nose in it. It is a U.S. championship, so obviously want to place well and hopefully compete against the best.
So we're talking about mental toughness. Any, Brett? Oh no, go ahead.
For him or for?
We're just gonna ask Sid.
So I have a question. Is there any metric that can be used to measure toughness?
That's a good one.
Have you seen or read any means objectively to train toughness? What mental exercise can be used to train toughness? So I think, without being crazy, I think putting people in the conditions they're going to race in and a similar environment and similar paces. And, the marathon is a long tempo run. And so I think getting them used to long tempo runs without doing too much, putting them through some of the same, mimic the race as much as you can, and so that you're training the toughness in training. But I do think, you can do things, visualize yourself being successful, positive feedback. It comes naturally to some people. Just being, you're always, if you race a marathon, you're going to go through patches where you have doubt. I mean, sometimes you could, some of my best marathons, I remember standing on the line thinking, how the hell am I going to run 26 miles at 5-minute pace right here? Seems pretty daunting at times, but you do it, you hang in there. And so it's tricking your mind, breaking into segments, breaking the marathon down into 2 or 3K increments or mile increments, whatever you need to do to trick yourself to do it. And so
Sid, in the long run, you're hurting, everything sucks. What do you usually tell yourself?
In a long run?
Yeah.
Long runs are just they were something that I definitely need to work on. I mean, you can ask, Brad, my strength wasn't the best whenever I got out here, but I kind of use it as a tool. It's not necessarily a workout every time I go out there, but it's definitely a big tool for me now to really work on my strength that I knew I needed to get better at. So whenever I start hurting, I just think, about how much better it's going to make me to suffer through it and to just, obviously be smart and not go crazy, but sometimes, you just got to push through it and get the miles in.
You got to embrace the pain a bit and not look at it like, oh, I don't want this pain, because
pain's good.
Yeah.
When you were talking about metrics, I just thought of the movie Rocky IV with Ivan Drago. You remember the scene when Drago is like training with all these sophisticated machines, and he's like,
and Rocky's like chopping wood with a fire.
Drago! He goes running up to the top of that mountain. Yeah. The movie's great.
Yeah, I remember that.
Cool. All right. What else? Cool. What else do we have? Thanks, Ed.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Of course. We need to have you. I need to do a proper Sid podcast. So I've asked you a couple of times. Yeah, I'm just kidding.
So someone asked, I'm stronger when I push or when I rest. And I think it's a balance as a coach. That's part of being a coach, is knowing when to push your athletes and to cut them some slack. And, sometimes you just see they look tired and you need to give them a break. And they're not robots and they're not machines. And, coaching athletes, a lot of times I don't let them, always like them to see the whole program and training, because I feel like once they see something, they want to do it. So if they see a 40K workout and maybe they get fatigued and tired and you feel like it's not time to do it, you don't want them to do it, but they get it in their head. And so some of it, is their own psychology of not having to do everything. You can't do everything in training, and sometimes you have to pull back.
Or there's always, do you have like surprise workouts?
So one of the things I do, and I don't do it often, but I do it sometimes, and this is something I learned from a USA Track and Field clinic, which I like, and I think this is good. So races are never going to go unexpected, and so you need your athletes to be ready for anything and be ready for paces, different paces, and slow paces, fast paces. Is sometimes tell them they're doing a certain workout, might be 10 by a K, and add another K to it. Or add something different, maybe something that takes them out of their comfort zone and takes them out of what they expect. Because in their head, they expect a certain thing, and you can't, in training, races are never going to go the way they want them.
Yeah.
Weather conditions, competitive athletes, how they dictate the pace. So part of it is just getting them, they're ready for 10 by a K, and they get done, and you make them do something extra, because A, they're fatigued, and B, that's what happens. That's racing.
Do you also have them to simulate something about something related with nutrition going wrong? Like, I was thinking about Peter Reed, who won the Hawaiian Ironman 3 times in the 90s, and he would always say that every time he would go on a run of the bike, to kind of get his long run done, he would always eat like nachos or something really, really bad to make his stomach upset. So he would eat, that kind of food on purpose. So he would struggle on the run, so he could simulate a bad scenario, a bad situation.
Wow, yeah, interesting.
Running.
Yeah,
I don't know. I don't know what you think. About
I've seen
that
some
kind
exercises where you pull stuff out of a hat. What would you do in this situation? And I do think, it's good that you sometimes not mess with your athletes, but you make them miss a water bottle, because that's what happened in races. Someone takes your water bottle, or you miss the station. It's part of the game. It's not always going to go. There's athletes that want it every 5K like that, no matter what. And it can't be perfect, because it's not going to be perfect in the race, and so you need to get them used to that, and that's part of your job as a coach.
Right.
And everything can't be a controlled environment.
Yeah.
In training.
Do they always, or do they try to use the same nutrition, hydration that's available in race course?
Well, for the elites, they're allowed to put bottles out.
I see.
And so they get stations every 5K. And so there's a special fluids station. And so the night before, they hand in their bottles. They have to hand in by a certain time, or you don't get bottles. You have to drink what's on the course. And so you hand in your bottles, and this Martin stuff seems to be pretty effing amazing.
They just released a new gel, huh?
Yeah. It's supposedly the first gel ever. It's a real gel or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know the science on it. But this Martin stuff seems to be really good, and because it has a lot of carbs. And one of your to be a great ultra marathoner, one of your talents is not just running, is your ability to take in your fuel, what you can handle. I just had one of my ex-athletes, Addie Bracey, just raced the Leadville, and she was throwing up like the last 30 miles or something.
No.
So a lot of it is what you can take in, what's palatable, what you can take in. And so Allie drinks the Martin 320 and can take it in. It's no problem, and it's a decent amount of carbs, which is a great gift to have. Not everyone can stomach it or take it.
Yeah.
In the past, I've had athletes that have bonked in marathons before. James Carney never ran a good marathon until the trials in Houston when I was coaching him, and he ran 2:12 there, and I think he took 10 gels. Oh. Which is a lot for racing the marathon. 10 gels, I don't know. That's like a blizzard or something. That's like a Reese's Pieces blizzard. Like, you might as well be eating that on the course, right?
How many gels do your athletes usually?
So they try to take every 10K. They take a gel, but the people taking Martin in the past haven't taken gels. They just use the Martin 320, which is it's strong. So the science looks to be taking. It used to be in my day that you took 6 to 8% solution of carbs ratio. In your drink mix, and now it seems to be that the science, I think when Nike did the 2-hour thing, it seems to be you want to take in a little bit more. But keep that in mind, it's what you can handle. Not all athletes can handle a lot of stuff. Ritzenheim, when he made the Olympic team in New York, I think he took 8 gels. He took a gel with a mile to go just to be safe. That's a lot of that's a lot of gels. Wow. I don't think Kipchoge would take 8 gels. So it's what you can take in. Yeah, it is. You should be taking all this nutrition, and you should be practicing it in training. And that,
right.
If you see, if you ever go on my Instagram, which is Coach_Hudson,
please follow.
Yes, follow me.
More than 35,000 followers.
I'm having a contest with one of my athletes. I need to be way ahead of them. They're coming for me. We practice it in training, taking gels, and them having to take nutrition while they're racing. It's something they have to practice. Some people are good at it. Some it comes easy for. Some it doesn't.
Random question. Mention 2 or 3 songs that will push you mentally when training.
So
Brad.
So lately, if you follow my Instagram, I'm into alternative rock, and I would just listen to Interpol the rest of my life till I die. But part of it, I realize there's a mental component, and recently I've started playing what my athletes like. I actually got into Drake. I like Drake.
Oh yeah.
So all my athletes like Drake for some reason.
He just released a new album, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So Scorpion, and so I do try to play some of the music they like, for fun and psych them up, and but as far as listening to music to psych you up, it's so individual. I've asked my athletes what they want me to play, and you could get anything from country to classical, or actually none of them like classical but me. But I can listen to classical and rap in the same 5 minutes. And
Valkyrie, gosh,
Flight of Valkyrie, yeah. Wagner,
yeah.
Yeah.
I was thinking, one of your posts I thought was awesome. Was so your runners are all, they're all running in groups in the dark, and I think you're playing some JC.
Yeah. Lately I'm getting into some rap, some Jay-Z. Yeah.
Oh, I love
New York State of Mind. I really like.
New York State of Mind. Yeah.
Big Pimpin's good.
Big Pimpin'.
I don't know, some song where he says he's the greatest rapper ever is pretty good.
Yeah. Hey, you want to talk about the latest Nike commercials?
Yeah. So I love it personally.
It's amazing.
Yeah. So I'm a huge fan of Kaepernick. Not a huge fan, but I believe the whole. I was an American Studies major in college. Didn't finish my degree, so don't jump on me. But part of America is an idea. It's a dream, and we're about freedom and freedom of speech. And the whole reason we play the Star Spangled Banner, and the whole reason I think we have a military and we fight, is it's not dishonoring. Kaepernick that's America, is being able to voice your protest, and it has nothing to do with how much money you make. People are entitled to freedom of speech and their opinion, and I think that was a ballsy move by them, and I read something that's paid off. People didn't think it would, but their consumers love it.
Oh yeah, I was reading an article that said that since its launch, Nike sales are jumped up 31%.
Yeah.
I loved it. It's funny because I kind of bookmarked the link of the commercial so I can watch it every morning when I'm before I start my day, because it's pretty inspiring. Like I don't know, I almost cry when I watch it. I was like, yes, dig deep.
Very nice. Yeah.
All right, what else do we have? Are we about 55 minutes, Brad? Not bad. So this is an interesting question. Finding
this one? You want that one?
Yeah, go for it.
This one. The one about the
I think we talked about that.
Okay.
I'm looking at the finding motivation. Finding motivation again. There's a person who says, 13 years of running, swimming, and cycling, 69 road races later, and I am mentally and physically drained. What can I do to get back to the sport I love or we love?
Yeah, so this is a tough one, and I went through this. So part of the reason I tell my athletes to get a coach is not just for my ego and for my vanity, and I think I've changed a lot as a coach. Is I really want to support my athletes and be there for them. And is when I was running, I never really had a coach, and it's fine when you're young. I think I used to go to the track and go do my 10 by a K or my 6 by a mile and leave the track and go home. But as my sport wore on me, I just got older, and I've been in the sport a long time, since I was 10. I was training hard. You start to go to the track, and it's very difficult mentally not having someone there. It's windy, you're there. I end up doing quarters when I need to do 3K repeats or something. Yeah. So part of a coach is just the buffer of the hard work, sometimes taking the buffer away, meeting even athletes not doing the same workout. When they have someone to meet at 7 a.m, they warm up together, they do drills, they do some strides, and then maybe I even separate their workouts. Having a group, I think for 99% of the people, is very important. There are the solo people that do it alone, but I don't think they can do it forever. I truly don't. I think at times they have to have people. And Allie trained by herself last year, and now she has a group, and I think it helps her to have people to meet in the morning.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, do you think that training with people helps you to get to the next level? Because I think so.
But with a grain of salt.
Of course.
So
because you're going to race by yourself.
Yeah, right, you want a group to train with, but not for everything and not for every single run.
Right.
I think a lot of times in your easy days, you want to run with slower people.
Right.
It's about recovering, and there is a time to be pushed. I think, a group training every single day, at least with the Americans that I see, they tend to run into trouble when it's every single, every run. Yeah. When it's AM and PM, I think you have to have some runs where it's just regeneration and by yourself. And because it seems like, or at least the groups that I've seen, someone's always feeling good and they're pushing. So or having the maturity not to just to do your own thing sometimes is important. But that person that was asking, I would say, is take a break first from the sport. take a good break. If you've been, the person's older and they've been doing this for a long time, take a mental break. I think, and then try to come back. I think you'll be refreshed, and maybe join a group.
Yeah, and something that I've heard before, or that I also learned, was kind of ask yourself why. Your why. Why do you want to? Why you run, or why do you want to do this specific race? So, or think about the good times, I guess.
Yeah. One of the books I just read is called Unfuck Yourself.
Ooh, who's the author?
And I forgot, it's this
There's so many
Scottish guy. He's really good. But
there's so many books with the fuck word these days. It's awesome.
He has the asterisks on it, but it's interesting because one of the things he says is whenever you're about to do something or you're going to do something, you need to ask yourself, are you willing or are you unwilling? And I think that's important because you can be unwilling to do something. You don't BS yourself. You're like, am I willing to do 10 by a K and live? Do I want to be a champion? Do I truly want? A lot of people say they want to be a champion, but deep down, do they truly want it?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? They want to say they're a pro runner and all that stuff, but not everyone wants that lifestyle to be great.
So is it basically to give your best, be all in?
Yeah, you can be unwilling, like unwilling to handle not being great too.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You can be unwilling, but one of the things it asks you is, are you willing or unwilling? And I think that's great to ask yourself whenever you're doing something difficult. You have to, yes, there's athletes that are in this to make money and it changes their lives, and so that's some of their motivation, but they won't have that forever when they make money. That will go away, and so you have to have some love for this and enjoy what you're doing.
This is fun, Brad.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have anything else that you want to add before we wrap this up? Any final thoughts?
So, I was very into methodology and training, and I've studied a lot of different training, and I'm a huge Canova fan, and I like a lot of different coaches, Salazar, Jerry, Schumacher. There's tons I take from everyone I can, and but I did see something this spring with my athletes. They were in the same shape they were at other times, but I really used sports psych as far as being fearless with their racing, and it really changed. Watch the U.S. half with Parker, and tell me there wasn't some sports psych going on there, because he was crazy. He was fearless and feisty and raced with nothing to lose. And I think it's made a huge impact on my athletes' performances the last year. And
cool.
I have to give credit. Allie really pushed me to get into sports psych a little bit, reading the books, and she gave me some books to read. It started me, and once I started, I went nuts.
Yeah.
So I do think it's an area that it's very untapped, and it's the future is training your physiology, but also training your mind to handle everything. So
nice.
The body control, or the mind controls the body 100%.
That's true. Cool.
So
this was fun.
Thanks,
you. Brad. Yeah. So Instagram, you are at Coach_Hudson.
Yeah, Coach_Hudson, and I post videos. A lot of times I'll put up times of workouts. You can ask me questions. I'll answer them most of the time, not all the time. I'm a big music fan, and so I usually do running videos and stuff, and it's something that I started doing because I don't feel like it interferes with the coaching. I do.
Awesome.
I do put my phone down and talk to the athletes when they need to be spoken to, and when they need some feedback. But I have fun with it. I love music, and I love the sport, and I hope it has a positive image to it.
And for people who are not aware of your little black book, can you talk more about it? Where can they find it?
Yeah, so I didn't have one in the car, but so the black book, it's at blackbookredo.com, and it's an interesting book. I don't think there's ever been a book like it. There's 220 plus workouts, explains all the workouts. It's not a coaching book like a training book telling you how to periodize or how to do your seasons. It's completely broken into events from it has a section on hills, it has a section on fartlek, it has a section on the 1500, it has a section on 5K, 10K, half marathon, threshold, and marathon training, and then even a little special block section in the back where you put two workouts together in one day. So a lot of the workouts are Canova, but they're a lot are from Oregon, a lot are from just people I picked up, interesting ones like Nick Willis's workouts I really found interesting because he'll combine a lot of different stuff in one workout, and he's a miler that's had a really good long career, and I think it's interesting to see. And he's coached by Ron Warhorst, so it's good. I feel like you can always keep learning and always get better as a coach, and that goes for both all aspects of the game: nutrition, heart rate, and the mental game, and also methodology. You can do better with the methodology that has an effect on their mind and stuff like that. It makes stuff easier to absorb. Sometimes you need it, not always, but so there's 220 plus workouts, and so you don't always go nuts comparing your workouts. If you run for a long time, you want to go to the track and do your 8x off 2 minutes and compare it to 1976 when you did 8x off 2 minutes. That's great, but it's gonna wear on you. So go out and buy the Black Book Redo. It's expensive because there's a lot of stuff in it, and there's nothing like it.
Yeah, I know. Amazing content. So cool. Thanks, Brad.
Thank you, everyone that supported that. And Hugo, thanks for having me.
Yeah.
I would love to come back again.
We have
a lot more to talk about.
That I was just thinking we need to talk about. So more to come. I'm excited to hear that. Yeah, we need to find really awesome. This was a great topic. There's so much to talk about. So cool. Yeah, we'll do more. Thanks, Brad.